documentaries, and we're going to talk about documentaries on Netflix, and then we'll talk about also who killed WCW, because I do want to have this upcoming month of June and a bit of July is going to be a little hectic when it comes to recording schedules because everyone's like off or somewhere. So I do want to have, I think some episodes will involve or short segments that we record will be involving Who Killed WCW. And they released a segment as of this recording, because I know that the first episode is coming out on Tuesday. They released about 20 minutes or so of the first episode of Who Killed WCW, and it is about what I expected when it came to the introduction for the documentary. You had Eric Bischoff on there. You had Kevin Nash talking about his own perception. But the thing that will differ from this documentary, like other ones produced by WWE, is that you don't have the WWE lens and machine kind of like looking at it, because you know that when you're creating a WCW documentary, it's filtered through a WWE filter. So you're not getting, I feel, a truly honest look at WCW and what the true opinions of like what caused the downfall of it. And they had a bunch of more people within that documentary who were involved within production and in like the upper echelon of like corporate, TBS, Turner Broadcasting, and they had like those people on camera and offering their opinions, and that was actually really interesting. So, let's first talk about the WWE documentaries on Netflix. So we know as a brand that WWE signed a deal with Netflix. They are having Monday Night Raw every Monday starting January 2025. And everywhere else besides the United States, they basically have SmackDown, NXT, and all of those basically PLEs. That's why I wish I'd be like in the UK, because then I just need Netflix to watch everything. Like that'll be
VPN.
much easier for me. So that's basically the deal for Netflix. And yeah, so more WWE licensed shows are set to join Netflix as part of this massive deal. So speaking to JP Morgan Global Technology, Mark Shapiro, who is the TKO COO, he shared plans for a lot of ancillary shoulder programming connected to WWE. So this basically means that they'll be creating shows on Netflix that include reality shows and documentaries. So reality shows giving a behind the scenes look, they're hardly new for Netflix. I mean, they've been doing things like teaming up with Formula One racing to present, Formula One Drive to Survive. And that show gave fans an in-depth look at the sports as well as the lives of the drivers of the racetrack. So now in January, wrestling fans can expect something similar when WWE moves to Netflix. They have their own litany of reality shows. In the past, they've had Total Divas, Total Bellas, and they have current projects that they've been airing, including Ms. and Mrs. and Love in WWE with Bianca Belair and Montez Ford. So we know that WWE is going to have a bunch of documentaries. They currently also have a deal with the Biography channel, so they're doing a bunch of biographies through them, through A&E. So they have a bunch of, actually, I think as of this recording, they had Ricky the Dragon Steamboat on as the latest biography. So when it comes to biographies and extended programming, and I don't know how many biographies and documentaries you guys have watched. I know for WWE and wrestling related, I know I've watched a litany of wrestling documentaries. I probably can't even count how many I've seen. I know, David, we talked about the one with Bray Wyatt that they recently aired back in April. I mean, like, they just do a really good job when it comes to wrestling documentaries. The first ones that I remember when I started getting back into wrestling was the Bret Hart documentary, the Shawn Michaels documentary. Like I was like super into that Montreal Screwjob feud thing, and like basically like they were doing um a rehash and like a reconciliation. Like as I was getting into it, they're like, "Oh yeah, we're having Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels show up on TV and like forgiving each other." Like I was basically like getting into it. I read Bret Hart's book that was like 800 pages long,
Fuck
and yeah,
Goldberg.
yeah, that was in the book. Fuck Goldberg. That was definitely in the book. But yeah, just super. I really, the thing that I love about wrestling is also just reading about wrestlers and the lore and just the stories that they tell. You know, like that's like a big part for me as like a wrestling fan. It's just like listening to their stories, and that I really enjoy. So when it comes to documentaries, you know, we know that they're having this partnership with Netflix. What do you feel like they can do, or what do you want to see from WWE Netflix when it comes to that extra programming? Do you want to see spotlights of specific wrestlers? Do you want documentaries about specific events in history? Have you had any ideas, you know, going into this?
I would like to hear more of like productions behind like certain events. Like say for example, like a lot of like WCW, like especially like like early 90s, like Dusty setting up shows, things like that. Like I
Mm-hmm.
like hearing like when Heyman talks about that time,
Yeah.
or even like when JR. So like I'd like to see more of like people that were like that hands on with Dusty Rhodes.
Yeah. I mean, like, I also kind of want them to dive into, because like they mentioned it before, and it wasn't, I mean, not in passing, but like it was in conversations about how they would also exchange talent from like ECW in the 90s
Yeah, they had a little yeah.
for WWF programming. I think that'd be like kind of an interesting thing, just kind of see like what the handshake deal was with like just having Paul, but just have Paul Heyman talk about, you know, that kind of era because
Yeah.
he's just really good at storytelling and understanding. And I know that's like one specific thing, but I do want to also like dive. I want them to dive into very niche things. Like I
Yeah.
would kind of like to see like a Tommy Dreamer documentary and have him go into that deep dive of like his thought process, attempting to in WrestleMania 17 like kill Paul Heyman. Like I
I thought
think
you were gonna say like being in ECW, but so
no,
we're gonna go straight to the end.
no, yeah. So like because I feel like Netflix, and again, I guess it just depends on. I guess you know that's the other thing. The WWE filter is still there, so I don't think they would. You know what? It's kind of hard because like when I watched the Randy Orton documentary that they aired on A&E, like that was pretty honest, and all they did was they just gave like a warning ahead of time
Yeah.
about like what he was gonna say. Did you watch that documentary, David? I don't know if you, I don't know.
No, but I recently watched the Eddie Guerrero one, and I
Yeah.
didn't realize like all
Yes.
that was going on.
Right. So, like in the Randy Orton documentary, like he gets very honest about like his career, his struggles. If you guys haven't watched those are really good. Um, you know what I'm gonna do with Who Killed WCW? I'm gonna buy it on the Shot Down Shoot podcast account, and then you guys can just like watch it as
Yeah.
the episodes roll through. Because I don't have cable, obviously, and it's on Vice. And I think they'll probably be like, "Oh, the first episode is free on YouTube," but I know like they're just gonna um just gonna have to watch it on cable. So I'm just gonna like buy the season and then we're just gonna have everyone watch and just like whoever's free, we're just gonna like have a some kind of stream during some time of the week in June and July about it because I think that'll be interesting and it's something new, like something different we can use as material. But that's what I want to see more of on Netflix is more honest, unfiltered, just like perceptions of like the wrestling business, biographies on wrestlers that is unfiltered and just honest. because I feel like that's what a lot of people really enjoy. And I feel like with Bray Wyatt, they were pretty honest when it came to like his character growing up. Like it's not like Triple H kind of like was mincing words. Like he knew he was talking about like it was difficult sometimes to work with him when it came to creative. You know,
Yeah,
like I feel like there was a period in WWE where um, they had this kind of like narrative when it came to like the Monday Night Wars. Like there was like this whole mythos that was kind of like created, and you basically just kind of had that story, and that's what they used for every documentary or whenever they had that interview or conversation. Um, and I feel like the barriers kind of lowered when it came to like the A&E biographies,
yeah,
and again, like even their own documentaries that they publish on Peacock. So I just want to see more of that, and even like with the Netflix budget behind them, more in depth, interviews and that kind of stuff. Because that's like for me when it comes to wrestling now, like that's the fascinating stuff
yeah.
is the interviews with like former wrestlers, how you came about this specific match, the backstage politics of it, like how you felt when you were in this match. Like that's for me very fascinating. But Chris, like, how about you when you're thinking about like Netflix documentaries or what you'd like to see? When it comes to Netflix documentaries, like what for WWE, what would you like to see?
Behind the scenes with Vince McMahon.
I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon, but I bet you it will in a third party. Produced by Dwayne The Rock Johnson.
Yeah, right.
and $5. What is it called?
$7.
$7. $5. Uh,
Definitely more of the real stuff, the real interviews, real feelings, where it's not like they're just kind of playing a role, or they're not being their true honest self. They're holding back information, but just like a confession booth kind of a thing. You know what I mean?
yeah. I agree
So
with that. And what do you feel like when you think of like all the wrestling documentaries that you have watched, what do you feel like strikes you the most? Like what burns in your brain when it comes to like when you're watching wrestling documentaries? Is there a specific one that kind of comes to mind for you that you're like, I really enjoy this documentary. They should do more of that type, or they should shoot it or direct it in this specific kind of way. You know what I mean?
the Chris Benoit story. Did they ever come out with a Chris Benoit like DVD set back in
They
the
had a
day?
Dark Side of the Ring episode.
Well, I know
It
that,
was
but
it was a two-parter.
early 2000s, did they have like a Chris Benoit like
I'm sure they
DVD?
must have had some kind of like
Yeah, we gotta find it.
documentary. But I feel like some of that stuff is like pretty sanitized, like early
Yeah.
mid 2000s. It's just like very.
The
Well, these
self-destruction of the Ultimate Warrior.
I mean, yeah, that there's that one too. That wasn't as filtered, but
Hit
that also
piece.
had an agenda.
Yeah, this guy's
When it
fucking
came-
crazy.
Yeah.
Hard
I mean,
Knocks, the Chris Benoit story.
that would be interesting. That'd be an interesting thing to dive deep more into.
Do you think
but
WWE and Netflix what do you feel like WWE would be like, yes, let's do a Chris Benoit documentary?
probably not.
I think they're gonna just not talk about him.
It's like Vince and Benoit. I feel like they're just gonna be like, let's just not talk about it.
But you never know, because it's not. It's like Netflix. I feel is just a completely different like thing than like a TV network. You know what I mean? I feel like through a TV network, there's more loopholes to deal with as far as like censorship and things like that, versus like Netflix, where I feel like it's more. I don't want to say the Wild West, because it's not like they're putting porn or some shit on there, but like
I
you know,
show titties, I guess, and dick.
but they could be more crass or
That's
exclusively.
true, but I think that it just boils down to what does WWE want to show. Because like they're in partner with Netflix. I don't think Netflix has the ability to just do it without their permission. I don't know. I'm not like reading the contract or whatever, so I don't know the specifics. But I would assume that signing this deal is just kind of like a partnership, not like we're gonna make documentaries that you might necessarily like about your company that puts you in a bad light necessarily. Because I feel like wrestler documentaries, it's so focused about the individual, it doesn't necessarily reflect on WWE because it's like, oh, this is about Randy Orton and Randy Orton's issues. It isn't like, if you did a Vince McMahon documentary, that's WWE because he was in charge, of WWE for up until 2022 or so, you know. So I feel like that's a different needle to thread, you know. With Chris Benoit, I mean, I feel like that might be more realistic than a Vince McMahon documentary. And I know that they had a Vince McMahon documentary on Netflix that they were going to do, but it seems like maybe they shelved it, or maybe they're going to reframe it, or what, like after their deal with WWE.
I mean,
Because
I could see them kind of hijacking the Dark Side of the Ring
Yeah.
idea concept and then kind of like making it their own thing. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
Thinking
Like
about
it'll
WWE
essentially,
things.
yeah, it'll be so they can kind of just take that shit back for themselves, but just like, they can talk about those darker stories and murders, and it could be How to Catch a Killer or whatever the fuck that show is called.
yeah.
You know?
I definitely see more reality-based shows like the Montez Ford and Bianca show. They'll definitely have more of that kind of stuff, but I would like to see more honest, just more honest, like John Cena related like documentaries and stuff. Like
Ugh.
the A&E biographies, I feel like are pretty honest
Yeah.
when it comes to, because I feel like, you know what it is. I feel like it's because it's on A&E. It's not like brought to you by WWE. There's this kind of this exception or this feeling of like, well, it's on A&E, it's an A&E documentary, so you don't necessarily see the WWE brand, so they're a little more cool with it. And again, I feel like with Triple H, I think he's more lenient to talk when it comes to talking about stories. I
Hmm.
think he's willing to be more honest in these kinds of scenarios. Because I feel like he's got to be signing off on these kinds of things when it comes to content, if he's a chief content officer. Um, but yeah, I'm really interested. I know like they've done to death the Montreal screw job. I don't think they want. I don't think I'd like to see that again. Maybe
They should
if
let
they
Edge
were
and Matt Hardy talk.
who
Edge
Matt
and Matt
Hardy,
Hardy
Edge and Matt Hardy. Yeah, you know
when
what?
they had
Honestly,
their
like
program.
what I would like to see, yeah, like some kind of like round table when it comes to like those kind of like specific
Table for
um
three on some
scenarios.
bullshit.
Yeah, table for three-way. No, but like Matt Hardy and Edge, and just kind of like talking about it, like just in a room, like facing each other. Same thing with like Bret
Gloves.
Hart and
No,
Shawn
I'm just kidding.
Michaels.
There's like Dave
With gloves.
Mustaine and Lars Ulrich in that some kind of monster documentary, just heart to heart.
Yeah, exactly. Honestly, what you just mentioned, that, yes, that's what I would like to see. Like Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart. Just like I know they've done Montreal Screwjob to death. I know that. I understand that. But I feel like if they had to go back into that well one more time, they could do, like that, in that kind of documentary is just like a raw, I'm in a chair, you're in a fold up chair, and we're just talking about it and just having a conversation about it. And just like a raw conversation. Don't edit it, don't clip it out. I just want to see like actual reactions from those two guys. So
Forced
if you
hug.
can do documentaries like that, like sign me up, bitch. Like I'm gonna be, I mean, you're gonna have raw, obviously, so I'll be, subscribed, but like you'll keep me if you have these kind of shows too. Because I eat up all those WWE documentaries, like all the biographies, the treasures, like the most wanted treasures and stuff. Like I love
Yeah.
watching that kind of stuff.
I've
More
been
stuff like
watching
that.
Cardona. I've been
Yeah,
watching Cardona hunt down figures and shit.
yes, because like honestly, what you mentioned, like the treasures thing. Um, I just really like just like the memorabilia stuff and like oh, this specific jacket from 1997 SummerSlam that this specific fan has, and then the wrestler who had that goes in and like talks with it. I don't even give a shit if it's staged. Like it just super fascinating because it is the actual jacket, and they do have memories about it. And I don't know, I just really enjoy that kind of stuff. So if they could do more of that, I'd be a fan. So if they're doing like the A&E stuff, just bring it to Netflix and I'll watch that. Do more of that stuff. But let's dive into Who Killed WCW, because this is going to be a show, and I don't know when we're going to air this, but the first episode is going to air on June 4th, on a Tuesday. And this entire documentary is produced by Dwayne The Rock Johnson and his team.
Who Killed
And
WCW.
and it's talking about who killed WCW in an unfiltered, non WWE perspective. I watched Busted Open, and they had Brian Gewirtz, who was the head writer in WWE for a while, and he was also the main writer for The Rock's material. He's also part of $7 Entertainment, I believe that's what it's called, not $5. um, and he was involved in the current documentary that is going to be aired along with The Rock. And honestly, I know, and I've seen every conversation and every wrestling podcast talk about how this conversation has been done to death, that there is nothing else new to dig up. But you know what? There is, because they have not interviewed like the specific CEOs and people who were in charge of Turner, and like those executives and people. Like they have people involved within like the more administrative part. It's not just like the wrestlers and Eric Bischoff and like the immediate people within that show. It's like people who are like, I don't like wrestling, and this is why I didn't want it to show up, on our channel. This is why we didn't think it was viable. And then we're asking people, because there was another thing like, oh yeah, it's obvious who killed WCW, and then this is what Brian Gewirtz was saying, like, oh yeah, everyone always says like we all know who killed WCW, and then he was saying like when he interviewed these 5 or 6 different people in the initial episode, everyone gave a different response, because no one knows who killed WCW, because everyone has a different idea or concept about who killed WCW. So this is what's the fascinating thing for me when it comes to this specific documentary. But what are you guys looking forward to? I don't know how many episodes this is going to be, but what do you hope to see from this specific documentary of Who Killed WCW? What do you hope to learn, or what do you hope they talk about more when it comes to the life of this brand that died in 2001?
I want to hear mainly Bischoff, Russo, and then like Nash just like rip apart the network. Because I want to
Yes.
see like how much the network like
Sting.
just yeah.
I'm
Sting's
actually
gonna be
curious
on
if
it?
they interviewed Sting. I don't know if they interviewed Borden.
I mean, how do you not? Like, it's fucking
Yeah, I just showed
WCW.
up to work.
Yeah.
I guess.
I mean, I feel like they wouldn't have like stopped at like, oh yeah, only this guy and this guy, because they were definitely interviewing, like, again, like I said, like administrative people, like super specific people, and like board
Yeah.
members, and executive suites, like managers and CEOs and that kind of stuff. And they also have like people like Kevin Nash, and I mean like people who are still alive, because like a lot of people are dead. So oh, I have Diamond Dallas Page in there. They had Eric Bischoff in the initial episode, uh, Kevin Nash, and they didn't show Sting, but I feel like that you would think that'd be a person who would want to be interviewed, unless he didn't want to be a part of it.
It's
I'm
probably
trying to
all
think
those
of,
executives that Bischoff was introduced to, like whenever they got bought out or whatever, or they came in the late 90s, like 98, 99 era, like those people, because they're the ones who more than likely shifted what WCW was supposed to look like.
Yeah, merge. That was what, AOL merger.
Yeah,
AOL, yeah. I mean, Hulk Hogan, I'm pretty sure, is in the documentary.
It ain't his fault.
Yeah, well, apparently not. I mean, like, Kevin Nash was kind of honest when they were asking about, like, in the first, like, I think it was the first 20 minutes of this documentary that they showed on YouTube. You guys can see on YouTube. Kevin Nash said, "Thanks for the paycheck." for like when he thought of WCW, what would he say? He said, "Thanks for the paycheck." And there was, so yeah, in the initial like first 20 minutes, they were talking about like kind of like why Turner Broadcasting were, I don't remember if it was like just part of a conglomerate, but like why they didn't like wrestling and why they didn't feel like it fit the brand. And most of the people within that executive suite, that that top level, didn't like wrestling, besides Ted Turner and maybe one or two other people. So for Ted, like, he was a big wrestling fan. I mean, he created this channel like Turner Broadcasting in Georgia. It was a local channel, and then it became this really big thing. And like, if for him, he felt like, this was also kind of like, he did like wrestling, but he was also like, I'm gonna like wrestling. I'm gonna keep liking wrestling, and basically fuck you to everybody else. And that was kind of like his way of like maintaining that WCW brand. And yeah, like that definitely felt like he was a big part of why WCW failed, because once he left, and then you had all these other people coming in and offering their own opinions, and people, they were being sold off to these other companies when they had that whole Time Warner or whatever merger. Yeah, that's when shit hit the wall. So yeah, very, very interesting. I am super excited to see, this upcoming series. And I feel like I think when we get to our next recording, whenever that might be, it might be like 2 or 3 episodes in, we'll try to get some kind of reaction recording this month after this podcast. Because, I mean, again, I just feel like it's fascinating. I know like certain things have been done to death. WCW, Monday Night Wars, and Montreal Screwjob and all that kind of stuff. But when we hear like the new insights and things, I think that'll be interesting to kind of pick apart and talk about. And that's what I want to do in our next episode. Yeah. So that is a wrap for this episode of the Chi-Town Shoot podcast. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, rate us, and leave your feedback. Tune in next time for more wrestling madness. Until then, keep marching out.